Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. We are reviewing Honey Boy, directed by Alma Har'el. This film is essentially an autobiographical piece that Shia LaBeouf wrote. It's mostly about the relationship between the boy and his father and dealing with how his father affected his life later on. Shia LaBeouf plays his father in this movie, and I think the most interesting scenes, and this is like half the movie anyway, is just between Shia LaBeouf and his childhood self. This is a really insightful movie, in a personal way for like how Shia LaBeouf grew up and what his relationship with his father was like. This character is very vividly drawn, I think, and you can see exactly like who this guy is by the way Shia LaBeouf plays him and just by like this dialogue. It really feels like only he could have written this movie because he knows it. It's like he just heard his dad's voice in his head and that was like the screenplay, and these conversations with him that were sort of like eating away at him or torturing him, or the moments that he cherished with his father, that is the core of the movie. And the movie in that way is very engaging. It comes from a very sincere place. He wants to give you a slice of his life, and that's a really good reason, I think, that, people go to movies. And I think a lot of people in my audience even really enjoyed it. I think this film really has an audience for people who are just interested in other people's lives, like the reason that people would read a memoir. There's actually very little else in the film other than this relationship between the son and his father, and then the son in his later years, played by Lucas Hedges, dealing with these things in rehab and trying to make sense of what he took away from his father. This movie really doesn't have a structure. It doesn't really have like a driving force. There's not really much of a plot. It wasn't really an issue to me because there's a lot of engaging scenes that are just motivated by characters. But if you're not emotionally invested, you might notice that. I personally didn't get super invested in the film until like the second half. But the second half was extremely strong. The pain of this child like trying to reap what he can from his father and his father not giving him what he needs was very heartbreaking. Shia LaBeouf and Noah Jupe are just fantastic in this film. It feels like Shia LaBeouf's very in tune with what is psychologically motivating the character at all times. Reacting and like suppressing anger. There's a lot of anger in this movie. The movie is about dealing with pent-up emotions, and Shia LaBeouf is able to show how this character deals with those emotions internally, blocking them. He's like Wonder Woman. The bullets are firing at him and he's just... I think that if he weren't Shia LaBeouf and he was a more like respected actor, I could see him getting major supporting actor buzz for this film. He has some, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to go that far. The performance is excellent. If he got a nomination, I'd be happy. One of the issues I had towards the beginning of the film was that I thought that it focused so much on Shia LaBeouf's character that I wanted to see more of Noah Jupe's character. I wanted to see more of the child. I thought it should have been more of an equal feeling relationship, but it felt more like it explored the dad. And right when it started to actually explore the son more, and they kind of became equal in the second half, and maybe it became a little more of Noah Jupe's movie there, it totally captivated me. Yeah, I just was very invested emotionally into this story. It was very painful and heartbreaking at times. The way that the character finds catharsis in exploring the past with his father is very potent, feels extremely true and honest. It's a perfect balance of like, you see this guy as like a totally flawed human being who messed up his kid in many ways, but also you feel sympathy for him because he's a human being. The first half to me felt just as good as the rest of the movie. I thought the relationship with the child and the father was enough to sustain the entire movie, and I could see how this is all relevant to how the son is affected later in his life, and it explains some of his behaviors and his emotions. So those scenes were interesting for that reason. It's always building towards what we know is coming of like, how does he eventually deal with this in his adult life? How does his relationship with who his father was change as an adult? Because clearly there's something that's not working for him. It's too painful and he's not dealing with it in the right way. It's a very universal story. This is a movie about how we, reflect on certain experiences and then realize that we actually might be like kind of fucked up. It was very resonant in that way. It's a great movie that people will relate to for that reason. But I also don't think they really nailed that catharsis, like what he came to terms with. I don't think it was very specific. It felt like the movie kind of wrapped up a little fast without making a specific point about what was happening. I could see some of the things that led him to that moment, but it wasn't quite as powerful, I feel like, as it could have been. The movie's very much just putting you in scenes with how things happened and recreating these memories, but it's not going like to the next level ever, like filmmaking wise. The filmmaking was like somewhat standard with exceptional acting and just like very real moments. I think a movie that does this even better, the memoir and coming to terms with the past and also how we remember things, examining that on like a meta level, is The Souvenir. That movie, you're like learning things, you're gaining insights as you're watching it, whereas this movie, it feels like it's almost pre-packaged with all the things that you're going to learn and understand about where this movie is heading. I wouldn't call it outstanding, although it seemed like people in the audience were very emotionally impacted by it, and I would expect that most people who go to see this movie would really enjoy it. It's hard not to be. There was sort of a mesh of forgiveness and resentment that somehow came together super well. Like a little complicated in the way that things are, but it felt emotionally right. Yeah, I think that this is just a film that's easy to come away from and be super emotionally captivated in, and for that reason, you gotta see it. If you like movies that make you feel something for human relationships, then you will want to see this movie. I will give this movie a 9 out of 10. I'll give it an 8. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Are you a broken father or a broken son?